It's like every time you open the news app, it's just another crisis, right? Environment's in trouble. Biodiversity's going down the drain. Conflicts everywhere you look. And it's like this general feeling that things just aren't right ethically, you know?
Yeah.
It gets to you, right? It can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes. Like, where do we even go from here?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that these days. But it's hard to escape the negativity. But you know what? If we can actually shift that perspective.
Right.
Like, what if instead of getting bogged down by all the problems, we could actually tap into something that's way more proactive and optimistic, something that gives you actual energy to work towards a better future.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So that's what we're diving into today, right?
Exactly. It's all about finding that perspective that helps you engage with these huge challenges, not from a place of despair, but with like genuine possibility and even enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think you'd agree with that.
100%. And our guide for this deep dive is the work of Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, specifically his book, The Liberation of Intellect, Neo-Humanism.
Great book. Now, before you run away thinking this is some super dense philosophical treatise, I actually find it really accessible.
Yeah, totally.
Because, you know, these ideas were originally shared as talks, not like stuffy lectures, but actual dynamic conversations.
Yeah.
And at the core of it all is this idea that your personal growth, like your own inner development, is deeply connected to the well-being of society as a whole.
It's a powerful connection for sure.
Right. And it's this connection that lays the groundwork for real, lasting, positive change.
That's the key, right? It's not just about fixing surface level problems. It's about getting to the root of things.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to kind of distill those core principles from Sarkar's philosophy. You know, those golden nuggets of wisdom that can really ignite our listeners' enthusiasm and energy to help them approach even the most daunting global challenges with a sense of hope and with a real drive to make a difference.
I'm all for that. And I think one of the most striking things that Sarkar emphasizes is the importance of our inner development. Right from the get-go, he talks about how a lack of inner adjustment can actually hinder our connection to something deeper, what he calls devotional sentiment.
That's interesting. And honestly, when you're bombarded with news of climate change, social injustice, you name it, it's easy to feel disconnected from that deeper sense of purpose, you know?
Yeah.
Even a bit lost and hopeless.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where this idea of inner adjustment comes into play. It's like if you imagine trying to see through a dusty lens, that dust represents all the external noise, all the negativity that can cloud your inner vision. It makes it harder to connect with that deeper sense of purpose and well-being.
It's like you can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And Sarkar suggests that cultivating this devotion is actually the highest mission in life. Now, this might sound a bit abstract, but it's important to understand he's not necessarily talking about a specific religious practice.
All right, it's broader than that.
It's more about cultivating a deep connection to something bigger than yourself. Some may call it a higher purpose. Maybe it's a set of values that you truly believe in. Maybe it's a sense of belonging to something greater than yourself, whatever resonates with you.
I get it. So it's not about blindly following dogma. It's about finding that inner compass that guides you.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this inner connection becomes your source of strength. It's a wellspring of inner peace and resilience that can help you navigate even the most overwhelming challenges.
It reminds me of that analogy he uses about the palm seed.
Oh, yeah. What a great one.
Right. It sprouts up quickly, looks impressive from the outside, but on the inside, it's hollow, it's weak, and eventually it just decays.
Such a powerful visual.
And it makes me think about how when we focus solely on external achievements, you know, material progress, without nurturing our inner selves, we risk becoming like that palm seed, you know, all outward show, but lacking that inner substance.
And that inner emptiness, that lack of real nourishment, that's what leads to the cynicism and despair that we see so much of these days.
It's like the opposite of hope.
Exactly. But this devotion, this deep connection to something greater, it acts as an antidote. It's like a source of internal richness that can help you overcome those feelings of cynicism and despair.
It's about building that inner foundation first, right? So you can actually go out and create meaningful change in the world from a place of strength and resilience.
100%.
Yeah.
So we've talked about inner development for you. Now, how do you actually take that and apply it to those really big external issues, you know, the ones we were talking about earlier?
Right, because those problems aren't going away just because we feel good on the inside.
Definitely. So one of the things that Sarkar talks about is this concept of geo-sentiment. And he sees it as a major hurdle in our collective progress.
Geo-sentiment. Okay, break that down for us. What exactly does that mean?
Sure. So geo-sentiment is basically when you prioritize the interests of your own geographical area Your neighborhood, your city, your country over the interests of others.
Oh, I see. Like my town is better than your town.
Exactly. It's that us versus them mentality,
Mhm.
but based on geographical boundaries.
So it's like drawing an arbitrary line on a map and saying what happens on our side is more important.
Pretty much. And Sarkar argues that this kind of thinking, along with all its related forms like geopatriotism, geo-religion, geo-economics, it creates these huge imbalances in the world.
Imbalances? Like how?
Well, think about it. When you prioritize your own little corner of the world, you fail to see the bigger picture. You lose sight of how interconnected everything really is.
Yeah, okay, I see it.
And that's when you start making decisions that might benefit you in the short term, but ultimately harm everyone in the long run.
So it's like short-sightedness.
Exactly. And it can manifest in all sorts of ways. Think about the climate crisis, for example. If a country refuses to reduce its emissions because it's worried about its own economic growth, that's geo-sentiment in action. They're putting their own narrow interests ahead of the well-being of the entire planet.
Right. So in the end, everyone loses, even the country that was trying to protect itself.
Precisely. Because we're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
And he doesn't just say we should, acknowledge this geo-sentiment. He says we need to actively fight against it.
Yeah, that's a key point. It's not enough to just be aware of it. We have to actively challenge these divisive ways of thinking.
That's pretty powerful. And his weapon of choice in this fight is something he calls rationalistic mentality.
Exactly.
Now, when I hear rationalistic, I think of logic and reason. But it sounds like it's more than just that, right?
Oh, it's definitely more than just cold, hard logic. It's about using your intellect, but also cultivating a broad and open mind.
Okay, I like that. So how do we actually develop this rationalistic mentality?
Well, Sarkar outlines a couple of key ways. First, he emphasizes the importance of study. He says we should be diligently studying diverse subjects, both general knowledge, like science, history, art, and also what he calls spiritual subjects.
Spiritual subjects, so not necessarily religious doctrine, but more like philosophy, ethics, things that explore the deeper meaning of life.
Exactly. And he believes that this kind of study helps us see beyond those narrow, localized viewpoints that fuel geo-sentiment.
It's like expanding our horizons, right?
Exactly. It's about gaining a broader perspective on the world and our place in it.
I'm with you. And then he also talks about the importance of listening attentively to and understanding the perspectives of others, particularly those who might not have access to formal education.
Yes, that's crucial.
Yeah.
Because knowledge shouldn't be hoarded. It should be shared.
So it's like a two-way street. We learn from others and we share what we know.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in doing so, we create these bridges of understanding that can help break down those geographical barriers that we were talking about.
It makes me think of that Sanskrit verse that Sarkar quotes.
Oh, yeah, the one about how ignorance leads to negativity and conflict.
Pathato nasti murkhatvam, jagato nasti patakam, mauni nam kalaho nasti, na bhayam chasti jagrata.
Yes, that one. It's so powerful. It basically says that when we neglect study, when we fail to cultivate empathy, peacefulness, and vigilance, that's when all the bad stuff starts to flourish.
It's a potent reminder of how important it is to cultivate those positive qualities.
And to me, it really underscores the urgency of overcoming geo-sentiment. It's not just some abstract philosophical concept. It has real-world consequences.
Absolutely. And in Sarkar's view, overcoming geo-sentiment is essential for making human existence genuinely glorious.
Glorious. Okay, now that's a word you don't hear every day.
I know, right? But think about it. When we rise above those narrow, self-serving perspectives, when we start to see ourselves as part of something much larger and more interconnected, that's when we unlock our potential for greater understanding, cooperation, and ultimately a more harmonious world.
That's a beautiful vision. And it makes me think about all the incredible collaborations that are happening around the world right now. Scientists from different countries working together to develop renewable energy, or doctors sharing medical breakthroughs across borders.
Those are perfect examples of what happens when we start to move beyond geo-sentiment and embrace a more rational and interconnected worldview.
It's inspiring to see that happening.
Absolutely. And shows us that a better future is possible if we're willing to work together.
Now, along with geo-sentiment, you also mentioned that Sarkar talks about something called socio-sentiment.
Right. So we talked about how geo-sentiment is about prioritizing your geographical area over others. Well, socio-sentiment takes that same us versus them mentality and applies it to social groups.
Oh, I see. So like my religion is better than your religion, or my political party is the only right one.
Exactly. Or my economic class deserves more than yours. It's that same kind of divisive thinking, but based on social boundaries instead of geographical ones.
And it sounds like it can be just as destructive as geo-sentiment.
Absolutely, if not more so.
Yeah.
Because it can lead to all sorts of prejudice, discrimination, and even violence.
Yeah, sadly, we see that playing out all the time.
Right. Think about conflicts fueled by religious or ethnic differences, or economic systems that exploit certain groups for the benefit of others. These are all manifestations of socio-sentiment.
So it's basically about drawing arbitrary lines between people and then using those lines to justify all sorts of harmful behaviors.
Exactly. And it's something that we need to be very aware of and actively challenge.
Okay, so what's the antidote to socio-sentiment?
Well, Sarkar proposes something called proto-spiritualistic mentality. And it's based on this principle of sama samaja tattva, which means social equality.
Sama samaja tattva, social equality. Okay, unpack that for us. What does that actually mean?
Sure. So it's not just about treating everyone the same on a superficial level. It's about recognizing the inherent interconnectedness of all human beings and seeing the equal intrinsic value in every individual.
So it's about a much deeper understanding of our shared humanity.
Exactly. And Sarkar argues that when you truly grasp this principle of social equality, it naturally leads you toward this proto-spiritualistic mindset.
So it's not about just being a good person in isolation. It's about actively working to create a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that your own well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others.
That's powerful. And it makes me think of that analogy he uses about putting the cart before the horse.
Oh, yeah. Great analogy.
Right. He says that if you try to focus on spiritual development without addressing the social injustices in the world, it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly. You can't have genuine progress without first laying the foundation of social equality.
It's about aligning your inner and outer worlds, right? Making sure that your actions in the world are consistent with your values.
Precisely. And I love how he quotes Rabindranath Tagore.
Biswajaner payer tole dhulimoye je bhumi sei to swarg bhumi sabar niche sabar majhe lukiye acho tumi sei to amar tumi.
You know that beautiful line about how the dusty earth which humanity treads is heaven and the divine being hidden in every heart?
Oh, wow, yes. Such a beautiful and profound image.
It really encapsulates this idea of social equality and universal interconnectedness. You know, that we're all part of this grand tapestry of life, and that every individual has a spark of the divine within them.
And it's not about passively accepting the world as it is. It's about actively working to create a better world for everyone.
Exactly. And this is where that proto-spiritualistic mentality comes in. It's about embracing this continuous, unstoppable movement towards a higher consciousness.
And this movement is fueled by that deep interconnection that we were talking about earlier, right? That devotional sentiment.
Exactly. When you truly connect with that deeper sense of purpose and meaning, it transforms from being just a practice to becoming a fundamental guiding principle in your life.
So it's not just something you do, it's who you are.
Precisely. And that's what empowers you to actively combat socio-sentiment and all the injustices that stem from it.
It gives you that inner strength and that unwavering commitment to creating a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. And this naturally leads us to one of Sarkar's most important concepts, neo-humanism.
Neo-humanism. Okay, I've heard of humanism, but what makes neo-humanism different?
So Sarkar refers to traditional humanism as so-called humanism because he believes that it often lacks a consistent and expansive source of inspiration.
So it's like humanism, but with something more.
Exactly. Neo-humanism takes the core values of humanism, things like reason, compassion, and social justice, and expands them to encompass all living beings.
All living beings, so not just humans.
Nope. It includes animals, plants, even the inanimate world.
Wow, that's a pretty radical expansion.
It is, and it's based on the understanding that everything in existence is interconnected and inherently valuable.
So it's like recognizing that we're all part of this web of life and that we have a responsibility to care for the entire web, not just our own little strand.
Exactly, and this is what Sarkar sees as the perennial source of inspiration that traditional humanism often lacks.
So it's not just about being nice to each other. It's about recognizing our deep connection to all of life and acting accordingly.
Precisely. And we see this neo-humanistic perspective starting to emerge in the world today. The growing awareness of animal welfare, the efforts to protect biodiversity, the understanding of our interconnectedness with the environment.
Right. It's like we're starting to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And as we continue to expand our circle of compassion, this neo-humanistic perspective will become even more powerful and influential.
And Sarkar says that when neo-humanism moves from being an internal principle to an external mission, That's when devotion as a principle transforms into devotion as a mission.
Yeah, it's like taking that inner fire and letting it shine out into the world.
So it's not just about personal transformation. It's about using that transformation to make a real difference in the world.
Exactly. And he describes this spirituality as a mission, as the highest state we can aspire to. It's when your individual life becomes completely unified with the well-being of the whole.
So it's like the ultimate expression of neo-humanism.
Exactly. You're no longer just living for yourself, you're living for the benefit of all beings.
And he believes that people who reach this state are the ones who can truly bring about a better future.
Absolutely. Because they have the inner strength, the wisdom, and the unwavering commitment to create that blissful heaven on earth that he talks about.
It's a powerful vision, and it gives me hope that even in the face of all these challenges, we can create a more just and beautiful world.
Me too. And it all comes down to this interconnectedness that we've been talking about. Our inner growth, our understanding of social inequality, our commitment to neo-humanism. These are all pieces of the same puzzle.
And when we put those pieces together, we can create a masterpiece.
Exactly. And that's what I find so inspiring about Sarkar's philosophy. It gives us a roadmap for creating a future that's not just sustainable, but truly fulfilling.
So for you listening right now, what does this all mean for you? How can you take these ideas and apply them to your own life?
That's the real question,
Right.
right? And I think it starts with cultivating that inner strength that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You know, that deep connection to something greater than yourself.
And it's about being willing to challenge those divisive sentiments that you encounter, whether it's geo-sentiment, socio-sentiment, or any other form of us versus them thinking.
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
those sentiments are like roadblocks on the path to a better future.
And finally, it's about expanding your circle of compassion to include not just your family and friends, but all living beings and the entire planet.
It's a big task, but it's one that's worth striving for.
And it's not something you have to do alone. You know, there are people all over the world who are working towards the same goals.
Exactly. So find your people, connect with them, support each other, and let's create that blissful heaven on earth together.
Beautiful. I love that. So to wrap things up for our listeners today, I just want to say that we don't have to be overwhelmed by the challenges facing our world. We have the power within us to create a brighter future.
Absolutely. And it all starts with that inner transformation, with cultivating that deep connection to something greater than ourselves, and with embracing that neo-humanistic vision of a world where all beings can thrive.
So go out there and be the change you want to see in the world. You've got this.
You truly do.